let's get straight to it.
Let's do it, man. I'm excited.
Me too. It's an episode that is worth discussing.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
I mean, I guess they all are. We wouldn't have a podcast if they weren't.
No, very true.
Welcome to Steven University. Nothing to say this week? Cool. See you next week. This one was not noteworthy.
This one's very noteworthy.
Yeah, it is. Let's do it. Cue the music. In case I choose to use that. Hello, and...
It was quite poor.
Oh, no, I've got to.
I just think,
Oh, cue the music.
Not our best.
Right.
I wasn't committed. You were too committed. Nah.
Hello and welcome to Steven University. This week we are discussing Homeworld Bound, an episode we got to see early thanks to, well, I mean, what do you put this down to? So do you know how this episode ended up being released early, Chris? Have you heard the story yet?
No, I was going to ask you about this exact subject, because I remember you messaging me and being like, shit, it might have leaked. And then I remember seeing loads of tweets from the creators that were like, here it is early. So, yeah, what went down, Dan?
So, when this was all being announced, this batch of 10 episodes, they were also announcing the movie sing-along version. So it's the movie, but with the words at the bottom of the song, so you can sing along. I assume stylized to look like the show or whatever. You know, like the show's font or whatever. I thought it was really neat, and they actually I think they premiered that sing-along version of the movie the night the first 2 episodes of this batch aired, if that makes sense. But they had these plans to do all these screenings of this movie, of this sing-along version of the movie across America. Monday this week. What date would that have been? So 2 days ago. So the 23rd, I think, 23rd of March.
23rd, yeah. 23rd, yeah.
And it was going to come with a special preview episode of Steven Universe Future. And when they announced this, everyone went, Jesus, that'll be the first episode of the final 4. That's bonkers. Why would they do that? We're going to get all these spoilers and leaks. Some people were speculating the plan was going to be to release the first of the 4 on the app on Monday, regardless. But we never will know, because what happened was that those events, obviously, very sadly, got cancelled because, the world is ending. So the episode just went up online, and we don't know if they put the episode up online because that was always the plan, or if they put the episode up online because they had to cancel all the events and they were it was a bit of a gimme, just like okay, you didn't get this thing for the fans. Here's an episode early. You can see why they chose it. For those who don't know, this episode involves quite a bit of Spinel. So if you're doing a movie screening, the first Spinel featured episode of Steven Universe Future is a very nice and very convenient companion piece for it. So it worked out beautifully, and it's a real shame that audiences in America didn't get to watch the movie followed by this. But that's basically what happened. It's a little unclear again whether it was always the intent or not, but I'm thrilled. A couple of reasons. One, we can actually put this episode up the night that it airs on television, which I'm really excited about. We've never been able to do that before. But two, it gives us a chance to sort of take a look at one episode without worrying about also recording another one straight after it. So energy levels wise,
yeah,
that's nice. Because I feel like with every set of 2 we've done, the first one's loads of energy, second one has been like a slightly dying. Particularly, I think the first set where I just completely lost the train of any thought at one point and literally had to go, I'm sorry, I have no idea what's happening. I don't know if you recall that moment.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, we might try and record the others one a day to avoid that.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, we'll see what we can do. But so I hopefully that answers your question, and anyone who's listening, because I'm sure. Yeah, I was sure you would have that. Do you reckon it was intentional all along, or do you reckon it was a sort of a what's the word, like a peace offering because the screenings couldn't happen?
No, I reckon it was probably intentional all along. I think it makes sense that it would have been. I think that, that makes sense to me. I mean, like you say, what matters is we got the episode. Hip hip hooray! But I would suspect that to me sounds like that could have been the plan all along.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think that's possible as well, because we did it with like Legs from Here to Homeworld, didn't we? Where they screened it for an audience, and then it went on the app like a day later. You know.
It's also a very, and this isn't, this doesn't mean to sound like a criticism, but it's also like the episode ends kind of the same way the episode begins. Stephen running away from his family. So I kind of think that it's not like maybe I think parts one, it seems like a part you could separate from the other three parts. We've had the final villain of that opening shot. We've had, we'll talk about it. We'll recap the ep, Dan.
Yeah, so this one is Homeworld Bound. It's Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, but with the diamonds. Stephen runs away from the gems. He tells them not to follow. He says he needs to go to the only people he thinks that can help him, but he's been avoiding this whole time. He does, of course, go to Homeworld, which is quite different now. We'll talk about in what ways when we get into the full discussion of the show. He bumps into Spinel, who's like, "Oh, you keep changing size. The solution is Yellow Diamond." So Spinel, Willy Wonka's him over to Yellow Diamond, where Yellow Diamond reveals that she's now like using her powers to correct correct gems, put them back right after all those years of experimenting with them and essentially damaging them. She's now doing her best to sort of help gems, and she even mentions any Homeworld corrupted gems want to have their horns reduced, that they can come see her. I thought it was very nice, but it turns out Steven's like, well, no, it's a physical problem, but we're talking about mental issues. Ah, God, I've lost Chris. During the intro as well. Terrible. I think he hung up on me. Hey, did you manage to hang up on me?
Hold on one sec. Yeah, in trying to turn you down, I accidentally hung up, so that was me.
Beautiful. Anyway, so I forgot what I was up to. Oh yeah, so Yellow Diamond can't help Steven because he's like, it is physical, but it's not physical. Like it's to do with my thing. So they go, if it's an emotional issue, you could go see Blue. Blue uses her new power because all the diamonds have a new power, which is instead she does no longer spreads tears and sadness because she's in a happier place. She's spreading joy, physical joy. She's physically making people feel happier, but like with when she was making people feel sad, it's not really their feelings. She's just almost like forcing her own feeling on them. It's not true happiness. Stephen, realizing this, says this doesn't really help me either. And actually, for the first time, sort of saying the thing we were all thinking, which is what we were all thinking Stephen should be thinking, which is he says very specifically, "Hey, this is something I need to work on. You can't just magic my feeling. You can't just magic and make me happy." And which is really ironic because that's all he's been trying to do since day one with these problems. But there you go. So he then is told, "Oh, well, then in that case, you need to see White." And White has a new version of her power as well, and it's literally the opposite of her old power. She used to be able to sort of force her personality into other gems. Other gems can now put their personality into her, and if Steven wants to truly speak to himself, he can do that through her. The only problem is she's actually quite a big source of his trauma. So while the idea is correct, the only person who can understand Steven is himself, and it is an internal problem. We've finally gotten to that fact. Unfortunately, because it's all sort of facilitated by White, Steven loses his shit and tries to make White shatter her own gem, essentially, by headbutting a wall in revenge for all the stuff she did to him in a moment where he loses control, a bit like his moment with Jasper in the previous episode. Realizing that he's potentially going to hurt them the same way he could potentially hurt his family at home, he bones out pretty much the same way as Chris pointed out at the episode starts as it ends, with Steven leaving to where, I don't know, we'll discuss possibilities later. But overall thoughts, Chris, on the episode?
I think it's tricky. I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it because, as you sort of said with your Willy Wonka and the chocolate factory analogy, it's kind of catching up with the diamonds, and it's this is what Homeworld looks like now. We've not been to Homeworld in a long time, not since it was this new, or the tail end of the new era, at the beginning of the movie and stuff. So this is where things stand now. This is what Spinel's up to. This is what the Diamonds are up to, and that's great. Like, that's very entertaining. It makes for an entertaining episode. It's potentially jarring, coming immediately off of the last episode, which felt like, we're barreling towards the finale. But I'll tell you what, that's a good point, actually. Right. So it's the reason that doesn't make me dislike the episode. The reason I don't see that as a negative, other than just wanting to play catch up with the Diamonds. If the finale was built as a 3-part finale, and this was the penultimate episode the week before the finale, which is kind of what it's ended up being, then I don't judge catching up with the Diamonds badly at all. I love that. Big fan. So I'm not judging the episode on that, because it doesn't seem fair to judge the episode on that. My only complaint would be, this feels like catching up with the Diamonds, not part 1 of a 4-part finale. But that's to do with airing and to do with all sorts. So I don't feel it's fair to judge the episode on that. So therefore, I had a lot of fun with this episode and really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I think we're predisposed now to compare this to Change Your Mind, because the original Steven Universe show ended with a 4-part finale, but I think they've done they very distinctly called this Homeworld Bound, and the next episode is very distinctly everything's fine, and then I'm a monster, and then the future. They've made a real effort to separate them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder if these are all going to be individual stories.
I think they might be, and I think history might show that they're best viewed as individual stories.
Yeah, and I think that what the danger the sort of danger we've stepped into is making assumptions that there's a parallel here between Change Your Mind and these 4 episodes. And for me, I think one thing that Future has done in general is establish itself as a subtler show, also not necessarily, like, the episodes do lead into each other, but all the episodes have so far had their own A to B, like, story of their own, like, an all, sort of an arc of sorts, like a beginning, middle, and end. So even though there are links, so, like, obviously the end of Mr. Universe was the van crashing, and the van crashing plays a part into the choice Stephen makes right at the start of Fragments, right? But Fragments is very much its own episode. Mr. Universe is very much its own episode, and I feel like Future has done that on the whole so far. So I feel like there's people that are going to be disappointed with the finale because they are expecting a Change Your Mind level, not just in terms of it being all connected and being one piece, but also in terms of it being scaled like that. And I just feel like that's what I've noticed a pattern in the trailers, and we've been guilty of it here too, right? Where we see something in the trailer and think big stuff's a coming, and then we end up getting a much more subtle version of the thing we were thinking of. Like the Connie picnic. I think we all saw that as being something way more dramatic and violent than it ended up being, right? We thought that was really going to be like the pivot point, because we saw that the picnic was going to go wrong. It looked very horrific, because you could see the jam splatter of the wall. It was almost quite an iconic shot, but the actual product ended up being a lot more subtle than that, and a lot more sort of down to earth than that. So I feel there's a real danger going into this finale of people feeling like there's going to be scale that we're not getting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So, and I feel like that's the issue we're going to bump against with people watching this episode too, is that they may be looking as you maybe were when you started watching it, and I think you very wisely have observed that's not a fair way to judge this episode. But it doesn't stop that for a moment you went, oh, that's a shame. I maybe was hoping it might be a connected thing, or maybe I had assumed to a certain degree that there was a chance we were going to get like a 4-part finale that was like one episode. I think this is Future. This is what Future was always meant to be. These sort of segments of epilogue that we're getting, more of Steven's story, but nothing too scaled like that, because the big adventure already happened. I mean, do you know what I mean? This has been described as an epilogue. So for me, like I'm starting to accept Future for what it is rather than for what it isn't. and I hope the rest of the audiences, and I feel like you're on that side. I think you're where I am on that as well, Chris. And I feel like I hope audiences are on that journey too, because I feel like there's going to be some disappointment with the finale otherwise.
Yeah, and I'm definitely there because you can't go if this episode had been entirely about Stephen and he was with the gems, but they weren't. We didn't get the stuff about what each of them are doing now. We didn't get any of that. If that was the case, I'd be sat here going, "Oh, isn't it a shame that the only time we've seen the diamonds is right at the end, where we've had to deal with the mythology? We don't even know what they're doing now or whether Spinel's with them." So the show, other than being another 6 seasons of Steven Universe content, the show can't win. So that's why I'm fine with it, because we got, we sat here at the beginning. Not of this episode, but of Steven Universe future discussion, going, we want it to be epilogues. We want to get a goodbye to Lapis. We want to get a goodbye to Peridot. We want to get a goodbye to Bismuth. We want to get more from Jasper. We've had all of those things, and they've been glorious.
Yeah.
I think anyone's complaints, the complaints I would throw at it, exist from heartache that we're not getting another 6 years of Steven Universe content, and it's not necessarily fair to have that always be the stick that you beat the show with when trying to review individual episodes. This episode, did it feel like part 1 of a finale? No. But was it a shitload of fun? Yeah, absolutely it was. So yeah.
And a shitload of fun that, let's be honest, did progress the overall story quite a bit. Because if you look back at the last couple of episodes, we talked about diminishing Steven's support systems. This was his last one. Like, other than the crystal gems, which he's just flat out been ignoring.
Well, he's run away. He's basically diminishing and running away. He's run away from Greg. He's run away from the gems. He's run away from Connie. From the diamonds now. He's run away from Connie. He's distanced himself from all of these people.
Yeah.
And all of these gems.
He's alienating himself step by step. And this was the last thing. This was the last dangling thread of a support system he had. And now he's alienated himself from that as well. And notice... He even turned his last enemy... apart from maybe, the fusion of Eyeball, and I always get confused with what was the name of her. It was Eyeball and Aquamarine. That made Bluebird.
Bluebird, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and apologies if Bluebird wasn't her, but was they? If I've got the pronoun wrong.
I think both Aquamarine and Eyeball are she, so
her. Yeah,
I'm 99% sure that Bluebird is also a she, but correct us if we're wrong in the comments below.
Yeah, apologies if I've got that.
I don't think we have though in this case. I think that's right.
So, with the exception of Bluebird, and I can't really remember how that did. Bluebird end with Bluebird coming around?
No, Bluebird ended with Bluebird team rocketing from the Pokemon franchise. Bluebird just sort of was like flew away, going, "I'll get you next time, Gadget." That's basically what Bluebird did.
But so maybe with some exceptions, you
can't win them all.
Fundamentally, Jasper was the last big villain.
Oh yes,
and he's won her round. And Jasper's now on his side. And
is she though?
He's run away from her.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's a heartbreaking moment from this episode for me. Like the Jasper, who's been lost for so long, finally finds her diamond again. Because look, she's still stuck in Era 2. Whether right or wrong, I don't want to get into the morality of the various gem structures we've had. Obviously, Stephen fought to free all those gems, but right or wrong, Jasper still very much depends on that leadership system, right? It was a big part. She respected authority, she respected power, and that's how the world made sense to Jasper. That it should be run by the powerful, right? So that system gets collapsed. Jasper is lost. Okay, doesn't know what to do with herself. She's out in the woods. She's just training. Like, what do I do? I don't understand this new world. I'm isolating myself from it because, like, I don't get this whole everyone's equal nonsense. Because as far as I'm concerned, power is everything, right? Steven comes back into her life, proves to be powerful. She's like, I get it. This makes sense to me again. I bow to my new diamond, Steven. Like, the structure is returning. Look at it. I get it. And then for him to just be like, go do something else with your life. Holy shit. Like, what a world-shattering thing for Jasper. Like, I don't know how Jasper responds to that. I don't know if Jasper fights through that. I don't know if Jasper... if I do that as in, like, next time Steven still is just like my diamond, or if Jasper finally learns the lesson that hierarchy is gone and that she can be her own person. Like, I don't know what Jasper's response to that is, but I'm really excited to find out. And that was a heartbreaking moment for me in this episode. Watching those structures collapse for her, just incredible.
Do you think we will find out, though? I don't know if they've got time to deal with that.
I think so. I mean, we're not going to get an episode dedicated to it, I don't think. No, but I do think we'll...
Would you be happy with, like, enough, like, the notion that Pearl's going to help her, having had to move on from similar things in the past?
Yeah, that's a really nice idea. Yeah, maybe that'd be lovely. Like, if in a future episode we saw Pearl and Jasper hanging out and just got the sense that... Because, again, we're at a point now... Do you not think we're at a point now where, like, there's no way we're completely resolving any of these issues? But at the same time, I just think that's always what Steven Universe has been. The message at the end of the movie was, you'll always have growing to do. It's never over. Happily ever afters don't 100% exist. You're always going to have something to improve about yourself. You're always going to have, hurdles to leap over. To assume you've got a happier ever after is it's a fool's errand, right? Like, it just doesn't happen. You just can keep getting better and your life hopefully will follow suit. So in a world where that's the mission statement of the show very recently, the idea that we're going to get a complete resolution on Steven's issues is bonkers. And I think the same for the other characters too. So we talked last week, didn't we, about what would be satisfying. And I was like, seeing Steven getting on the right path to mental health would be enough for me. Seeing him start that journey is enough for me because we know that the journey will then continue. I think I feel the same way about Jasper. I feel like I feel exactly that same way. Like, if I got just a little bit of Jasper being better, or indicating Jasper was not being better, that feels like I'm dismissing Jasper as Jasper is, but like working on herself and seeing herself as a person with value and not just being about power. Like, some indication she was struggling but developing, improving, like thinking about things more critically. Like, I'd be really, that'd be more than enough for me.
So going back to, because we've done a lot of theorizing, so the actual episode, I thought every diamond thing made sense. Every kind of interpretation of where they were now, they did really go for that message of the diamonds have changed. But I was there for it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a fascinating insight into what each of them were doing. Is doing, and it was just a lot of fun seeing White turn into Spinel. Was a particular highlight.
Blue Song.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, I quite like Blue Song. Yeah, it's always nice to hear her sing. Fantastic voice. I thought the blue. I think the blue thing was such a clear counterpart to where it kind of. I guess because we'd only explored White's powers in that sense in battle, and I think for me, I'd if you'd have said what scenes would I extend by 10 minutes or double in length, I'd probably pick yellows and whites over blues. But you're right, the song was lovely.
Yeah, so I mean, it's finally making. I mean, not finally. They have used her before, but Lisa Hannigan voices Blue, who is
such a beautiful voice.
She's got an incredible voice. I mean, she's a recording artist essentially. My understanding is that is her main career.
Yeah, she collaborates a lot and features a lot on the first album by Damien Rice, which is a wonderful album.
Yeah, so that's her thing because she's a recording artist. So
Amy, come sit on my wall. Such a great album. Man.
I think we can all agree that Chris's career does not follow Lisa Hannigan's.
Tell me.
For good
I'm
reason.
singing Damien Rice's part. I look to my Eskimo friend.
I mean, not to use an old cliche, but do
the
not quit your day
reveal
job.
themselves like a crack in the wall, starting small.
I can't talk.
Oh, it's such a... Honestly...
Who's singing them? How
peop-
can I criticize anyone singing ever after some of the shit I've put on this podcast?
Yeah, at least I'm not presenting it as a David Rice cover. Uploaded it.
Cracking out your ukulele.
Yeah, exactly. I will
What kind
say,
of asshole would do that?
If any, just a pretentious one. If any,
Somebody doesn't know when to quit.
If any, hey, that applies to both of us in every podcast we've ever done. Don't be beating yourself up over that. I honestly though, like, if people, especially if people like that song and stuff, honestly, like, I really implore you to check out "Oh" by Damien Rice. I genuinely think it's one of the best albums of the last 10, 20 years, however long it's been. It's a beautiful, beautiful record.
Yeah, well, a lot of people have been recommending Lisa Hannigan's own albums to me on the Discord for a while. I've made note. I wish I could pull it up quickly. Is there any way to pull this up quickly? Someone recently gave me, like, they were like, this is the one if you want to get into her. Like, it's. Let me see if I can find it very quickly. I doubt I'm going to be able to find this.
Yeah, I don't know much of her own actual solo
Oh, here we go.
stuff,
So
yeah,
this is from
that's probably a much better recommendation.
This is from.
I'm not aware of it personally.
Yeah, so this is from Dayskin on the Discord. It says, if you want to familiarize yourself with Lisa's music before doing the podcast, this was aimed at me. I didn't get a chance to listen to any of these. I'm sorry to say, but I'm going to read them out to other people who are interested in checking out her music. This was apparently much more in her style as well. I'll talk about that in a second. But Sisu, SEASEW, 2 words, Passenger, and At Swim are apparently her albums, and are all very good. So what I was seeing a lot of people saying, and I can't vouch for this myself, is that historically in the show, when she's sung, it's been in the show's style, which is obviously very theatrical, very musical style, rather than like pop music style, or whatever you want to call like modern sort of, whatever sort of modern recording stuff that she's doing on her albums. Apparently, this song was much closer to what she normally does with her voice in her own personal albums, was what I was seeing.
Okay, cool, awesome.
So there you go. So Lisa Hannigan obviously does the song's wonderful in this, and you're right. It's probably the least necessary journey in this.
Not necessarily, just a pure personal. Like, literally, the best way to describe it is if you were to say to me, you could make any scene 2 times as long. I probably wouldn't pick that. Out of the 3 diamond interactions, I personally preferred seeing yellow and whites than blues, because I felt blues was, in a way, it's a compliment to blue, the stuff with blue, because the stuff with blue felt the most natural, felt the most obvious progression. But I think that's partly because we've seen an awful lot of blues powers, and we've seen blues impact on people when she's emotional way more than we've seen White's power. So I think it's just that, like, I've spent more time in that territory with Blue Diamond than I have in that territory with Yellow Diamond and White Diamond. Yeah,
it's not so much a question of necessity to the story, more a question of which one you would have liked to have seen explored more, I suppose. On that subject, though, I think blues was probably one of the most important, actually, in terms of where Steven ended up from it. Because I wrote this down in my notes. I put the line in there. You can't just magically make me feel better. She replies, "Yes, I can. That's literally my power."
That was very funny.
To which Steven responds, "I don't want to feel better. I want to be better." And for me, that is a breakthrough. Because how many times now, Chris, you're probably sick of hearing me say it, Steven needs to start looking internally, not externally. He's not going to find some magic pill that he can just take, and that pill can take the form of a fucking marriage, the person's not ready for, or whatever other thing he's randomly chose that he thinks is going to fix it.
A fight with Jasper,
Yeah, a road trip with his dad. Like, none of these things are going to fix it. A visit to the doctors. Like, there are no easy answers. He has to look inside himself. And that's the first time I've seen Steven say that. And I found it weird a little bit that it took Blue essentially giving him happiness on a platter, for him to realize that. But weirdly, even though Blue's section is arguably, as you said, maybe one of the ones we learn the least about the wider, like what's shifted on Homeworld, and we get the least sort of fan stuff from. It's probably, in the terms of Steven's growth, one of the most important of anything he's done in the last few episodes. I think that was a really significant moment for him to, because it's not that Blue says that. Blue's not the one who says, well, I can make you feel better, but you don't want to feel better, you want to be better. Steven realizes that. He's like, this isn't right. Like, you can't just magically make me feel better. I don't want to feel better. I want to be better. That comes from Steven. And having him realize that is a huge step forward to compare to where he's been in the last, 6-7 episodes, where he's been doing nothing but searching for easy, simple fixes like what Blue offers him here. I just love the idea that after making that mistake so many times, Blue literally offers him one that kind of works too. And he's like, no, this isn't right.
Do you think there's a world, it's probably too adult a plot to do, but there's a world where if this show was 40, 50 episodes, that you could almost do an episode dedicated to, or a couple, or an arc dedicated to Steven using the clouds and getting a bit almost addicted to them. And you draw an analogy and draw a message of, sometimes to solve a problem, people turn to different things and turn to things that they end up having an unhealthy relationship with. I mean, it's pretty bold for a kids show to do, but how would you feel if they'd have done that? Would you have wanted to see that, or are you just like, nah, let's not go down any of those areas?
I mean, we're talking in a world where we've got way more time, right? Like, it's obviously
yeah. I'm not suggesting
I'd love to see it, but again, I mean, there's so many things I'd love to see. Like, you add that to the list, get in line. Like, there are so many things. There's so much more room for exploration. I think that's why Future for some people has been tinged with a bit of sadness. It's not because Future has been bad in any way. I think Future's been an absolutely extraordinary series, but I do think it's all tinged with a bit of, but this might have been better spread over more episodes. We might have been able to explore some more ideas if we just spread it over more episodes. But I mean, that's just because the world Rebecca's created is so interesting that you just want to go in every nook and cranny. This is the equivalent to, you've got a really weird shaped room with lots of weird furniture in it to hoover, and Future is just running the hoover through the main open space right in the middle. But what you want to do is get that little attachment at the end of the hoover and go into each corner and get out all the bits and do the skirting. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's a weird analogy, but that's how I feel with this. Like, you are hoovering the room. It will look a lot better when you're done. But I do wish we'd got on the attachment and gone under the sofa and around all the cupboards.
Sometimes in this world, people say a sentence that makes sense, and then give an analogy to simplify it, which makes it more complicated. And that, I don't know what just happened with the Hoover thing, but I'm pretty sure it was that. Like, I understood it all, but I understood the sentence anyway. Like, that was glorious. I had a great time with that.
It wouldn't be an episode of this podcast if I didn't make a shit analogy at some point.
I'm not. Don't take it as a criticism. I loved it. I'm letting you know on air, live. That was a highlight. Don't take it the wrong way.
That's what I'm getting at, which I think, so in answer to your question, I'd love to explore that, but I mean, that and 20,000 other.
But I think
ideas.
that's partly to do with all the external rubbish. Like, if Change Your Mind had been presented as the finale of the show, and then they went, okay, we got a bonus spin-off, epilogue, 20 episodes, we'd all be like, yeah! Like, it's the way it's been done. It's not confirming Change Your Mind was the end, not confirming the movie was just the movie, and then not confirming until this batch started airing that this was the final 10 batch.
Yeah.
Do you
So that to me is really important of a distinction. I think the people have gone into a lot of these episodes with the wrong sort of not attitude but approach because of the way it's all been framed. Framing is really important. So, for example, in the UK in cinemas, we have this blockbuster pricing thing, which people get really irritated with. The idea being that studios charge cinemas more to show the big blockbusters than they do the smaller films, so the prices have to be different. Now, the way they frame it is there's your set price, most films are on that, but when Avengers comes out, it's £2 more expensive. I think, fundamentally, that is the wrong way to approach it. What they should do is say, that's the price, and then all the smaller films are discounted. Do you see the difference? You're making a saving going supporting a small indie film, not we're charging you more to go see Avengers. It's all about the attitude you take going into it. And you're right, I think because of the way I think a lot of people would have had a very different reaction to the end of to Change Your Mind had we gone into it knowing it was the finale. But instead we were just left confused and sure there was more, but also really worried there wouldn't be. Like, it was a really weird thing to do. So getting this series was like, is this design? Is this intent? Are we being screwed over? I don't know anymore. Like, it's a really weird way to review a TV show because it's very hard not to take biases that generate from the circumstances into the thing, you know? So, I think a lot of people are going to walk away with weird mixed views of this and nothing to do with the content. I love the idea that generations ahead of this will see this show in its entirety without any of that baggage and will probably have a lot more fun with it.
Yeah, especially episodes that people didn't like purely because they were gentler episodes that came after heavier episodes and it felt jarring, but without the weight of expectation, without, I think wasn't the big one Wanted that had a massive hiatus after it and then came back with a really light episode and people were like, huh?
That definitely. I can't remember exactly if it was Wanted, but one of the really heavy bombs ended, and there was a huge gap. When it came back, it was like a really frivolous episode. It might have been Wanted, actually. I think you're probably right. But yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? And it's a shame we can't detach ourselves from that as human beings to review these things a little bit.
I imagine. I certainly would Change Your Mind, yeah, I think so. Because the problem with Change Your Mind is it ended, and the main feedback was, "What the hell was that? Was that the end? Was it not the end? What's going on?" And it means that you kind of don't end up judging the episode. I think this episode I've never experienced, and I imagine this will be true of most people. I've never experienced a character returning and having the exact same feelings towards that character. I imagine anyone that loved Spinel loved her here. Anyone that hated Spinel hated Spinel here. Anyone that went, oh, she's quite fun, it's getting a little bit annoying now, did exactly that with this episode. Like that, and I'm Camp 3, by the way. I really love Spinel, but then there are points when I'm like, oh god, yeah, okay, cool. And I had, it was like the movie's arc in the 7-8 minutes she was on screen here, which just made me laugh. I think that means that the voice acting is on top performance and the writing is all working together for a very consistent character. But I imagine those Spinel haters out there did not enjoy the Spinel stuff here.
Yeah, Spinel was consistent, and I was actually kind of amazed with what they did with Spinel here, because that consistency is actually speaks to a more interesting character situation, because when I was initially surprised and a little disappointed that she didn't look different, because I kind of was like, well, wait a minute, the movie happened, she learned to sort of, she learned to love herself and not rely so much on the love of others. Like she goes through the whole big arc in the movie, right? Like, I'm not going to break down now, but to make a point. But she goes on this huge arc, and at the end of it, because gems are obviously, their appearance is so based on where they're mentally at. I really thought we were going to see her again, and she would look a little different. The hair wouldn't be as ragged. Those tear lines, for sure, I thought would be gone. But she sort of accepted herself as is and wearing them as a badge, like a. These scars are who I am. Like, that's... At first I was disappointed, but then I was like, that's actually kind of brilliant. Like, she's accepted herself damaged, essentially, which is the thing she felt no one else could do in the whole movie. She kept saying it in the movie, didn't she? I think Cram pointed this out to me in the Discord. In the movie, she kept saying, oh, no one's going to accept me looking like this or something like that. And actually, yeah, that's kind of the point, isn't it?
I thought it was very beautifully done.
Yeah, so the fact that she's behaving exactly the same really suggests no, she's so comfortable in herself.
But I don't think she is behaving exactly the same, because she's so. I think, and key to that is this episode starts with her first appearance. She's joined a tour. She's not. Whilst when she's with the diamonds, she's very enthusiastic about them. She's not, she leaves Stephen alone. She's not with a diamond. She's just exploring on her. She's got, I think the signs are there for her to have the independence she decided to work towards at the end of the movie.
Right. That's also a really good point, because, yes, okay, so you're actually right. So on top of her being this new sort of almost amalgamation of the old Spinel pre-Pink shattering her heart, and not literally shattering, but like breaking her heart, and revenge Spinel. Because you're right, that's a really good point. She also has clearly adopted some level of independence and social decorum, because there's a moment when White hints that she kind of wants to be left alone with Steven, and Spinel like leaves and like takes the hint, and I was like, oh, okay. I feel like movie Spinel. I feel like movie Spinel would not have done that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, she has that look at at the door, which is quite funny, but fundamentally, she's not. You don't get the impression from any of her interactions with the diamonds that she is always in their pockets.
You know what? That's exactly right. Yeah, she's grown, and she's grown. She's the same person, but she's become her own person at the same time.
Yeah, I think so. And you don't get the impression that the diamonds are irritated by her, which is good, because you could have gone down that route for laughs and completely destroyed the end of the movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right. It's a really interesting and perfect balance. And now looking back on it, I'm kind of. Even though my initial gut reaction was, oh, it's a shame the tear marks haven't gone, because to me, initially I thought they kind of represented her pain, and I'd like to think that because I like the character and I appreciate how awful what she went through was, just being abandoned like that by Pink, I kind of wanted to see the marks gone, because I think to my mind that meant she was not over it, but like getting over it.
Yeah.
So seeing them still there was initially a shock, because I was just like, oh, what a shame. Maybe she's not quite as over it as she seems. I don't know. But I've learned to look at it differently and reframe it as, no, it's not that the marks don't mean she hasn't got over it. If anything, the marks mean she's absolutely accepted that that's a part of her, which is actually a more healthy way to burying it deep, hiding it, is probably way less healthy than wearing it on your sleeve and going, hey, like everyone, I have some stuff in my past that you could argue has damaged me in some way, but here I am wearing it on my sleeve. I'm open about it. I'm working on it. Aren't we all? That's actually more powerful a statement to make than the other. So, I came around to it basically.
Cool, awesome. Yeah. What else did you notice, Dan? And is there any triv, my friend?
Oh, there's tons, but there's loads of stuff. I mean, let's first of all, should we talk about the? Let's talk about the final sequence with White. I mean, we've not handled any of the stuff that happened there. Let's break that down. So White's powers are reversed, and she can channel the gems through her. We get a great sequence with Spinel, obviously, where Spinel takes over White. Which I just thought was really nice. But, I mean, White nails it, first of all. She says to Steven, after Steven finally learnt from Blue, I read that quote out earlier about, I can't remember the exact quote now, but it was the one about, I don't want to be made better, I want to be better, or whatever it was. He goes to White, and White basically says the only person who's going to understand Steven, because he's so unique, is himself. She basically spells out, hey, it's an internal problem. So the only barrier here is that her solution for dealing with his internal problem is letting him speak to himself. And I think in any other circumstance, that probably would help. The issue we have is that White represents quite a lot of his trauma. She's a big part of it. And the way the scene follows from there is one of the most incredible sequences I can remember in the show, for so many reasons. I didn't write down all the dialogue, and they haven't done the transcript yet, so I can't quote some of it, but holy shit. The basic fundamental thing that happens here is that at first Stephen is talking to himself, but then he realizes that White is involved in this. He loses his temper. He remembers all the shit that happened. And even though this is more representative than I think what physically was happening, by the way, they then switch roles in his head. He's controlling both, the small version of the character, the taller one, but he almost flips it round on her, where White becomes so Stephen, she looks like Stephen, and Stephen starts to look more like White. And he gets so muddled up and so angry, he tries to make White headbutt the pillar to crack her own gem, which is brutal, savage. But he's controlling the wrong one. He's gotten so mixed up, it's the him on the ground, the small him, that's holding the pillar. So he just ends up smashing his own head into the pillar, which is very lucky. Because if it had been White, I imagine I could have potentially done some real damage. Which snaps him out of it. Makes him realize what the hell is he doing. But what a brilliant sequence. The visuals, the visual language used, the way they represent the taller being Stephen by showing them literally take his form, even though probably, if we could see what was really taking place in that room, I don't think she actually looked like that. I think that was just, we sort of almost stepped into what Stephen was seeing. He saw himself as White in that moment. The way that it's done, the way the music builds, the dialogue, it's all just, I mean, incredible, right? Like, every element of that sequence is just so powerful.
And I don't want to get tied up in this because I think your explanation is right. I'd interpret it so strong the way it's done. I'd interpreted it as Stephen's so powerful that he had swapped them. So it was right. It was Diamond. It was he had swapped the forms basically. He's so powerful that he'd made White Diamond
shapeshift
the floor, and he'd basically shapeshifted them. I think there's no, like I say, I don't want to get into new semantics discussion on that for half an hour because we won't know, and I suspect you're right though, but I could just see us going around in circles about that.
Yeah, okay.
But that was my, just in case, I just wanted to voice that in case anyone sat at home interpreted it the same way.
Well, so I mean, in terms of positioning, they stay in the same positions. So the larger one that's White and the smaller being that's Stephen initially, they're stood on certain sides of the room, one nearer to the throne, one nearer to that pillar. When they shift, it's definitely not that one becomes smaller and one becomes taller. That can't be it because they're in the same positions. So that I'm talking about like with his powers. He sends himself into White.
Yeah, he's transmitting them into swapping. Right. I don't mean one grows and one shrinks. I mean he's transmitting himself into White Diamond's body and transmitting White Diamond into Stephen's form.
Yeah. So he's in control of both, and he ends up he shapeshifts them into each other essentially to.
That was mine. And like I say,
either way, you will never know. But like whether it's an interpretation or whether it's physically what happened in the room, the powerful idea of him.
Oh yeah,
confronting the person trying to help him is the person that caused his trauma. And what I came away with that thinking was, does White now understand what she did? Did she feel that? Is this true empathy? Is this new power of hers? Did she feel everything Stephen felt when he was inside like her sort of form? Because if she did, she's going to have some guilt over that. Because I don't think she ever truly knew what she put Stephen through when she separated him from his gem. Or is she just a passenger in that moment, and when he left, she didn't know any better? I'm not sure.
No, I suspect she feels it. But what's nice is, I don't know if that would make any difference because they've made me believe in their affection for Stephen and their belief in his cause anyway.
Yes.
Like with the character changes and with what they've done with the dialogue in this and the movie. Mm-hmm. So I think she probably does feel it more, but I think that doesn't make her love him more because she loves him as much as she can.
I didn't think it would change her feelings towards him. I thought if anything it might make her feel even more sorry for her own actions.
Yeah. I know it does also. I know I've come back to it a lot, and I know I keep coming back to it, and every time I kind of fall apart on it because I don't know how you would do it because I'm not clever enough. But I just keep feeling like this leads to Rose somehow. That she and what she's done is that last confrontation he needs to have. And I know, he's had it a bit in the room and stuff like that, but I just think we're going to see Rose across these last episodes somehow.
Yeah, there's certainly more of an argument for that now, I think. And I think it depends on your context as well, because Rose is gone. I don't think he's going to pull his gem out and it's going to become physically Rose, but I think there is a real chance now that he's going to have to confront some version of Rose. And what I was wondering is, if his pink powers get so out of control that it allows him essentially to communicate with her in some way, or a version of her, maybe in a mindscape. Like when he went into that weird mindscape where he met Blue and Yellow and told them that he was pink. Do you remember that? When he left his own body? A power we didn't know he had at the time, and we'd only just found out he was a diamond ourselves, so it was like new territory. Maybe he doesn't.
Yeah, he yells. It's in Reunited. He yells something like, "Can't you see who I am?" or something.
Yeah, like he's trying to tell them. It's the moment that Pink and that Blue and Yellow find out he's Pink Diamond, essentially, because the only way he could convince them, obviously, is from that position from essentially using Pink's powers, because they couldn't believe or sense that in him previously. He was rose quartz.
But my memory is it's not even deliberate. He just gets so emotional that when he yells that sentence, it reaches the powers appear in that form.
Absolutely, it's a really cool moment. I'm wondering if you might be right. Maybe it is going to end up being he has to confront Rose a little bit, and it's going to be because he can be as angry as he wants at White, but a lot of these things that happened to him were set in motion because of his issues with his mother. She did this, a lot of this. She's responsible for Spinel. She's responsible for the war and the damage that did to all the corrupted gems. He wouldn't have even need to go face White had those gems not been corrupted, and that's kind of her fault because she wanted to be free. And while her intentions were good, her approach was arguably problematic, starting a war and all. There's a lot of unresolved stuff there. Certainly maybe. I could definitely see a version of this where he sort of retreats into a mindscape and has some ability to communicate with her that he didn't previously have. I don't see her coming out of him in some way. I don't see the gem and him being separated and it becoming Rose or anything like that.
No, that was because that would just theorize. That was Planet was playing what ifs last week as opposed to an actual theory. I just keep coming back to this notion that
that's where his unresolved issues lie.
We're leading to Rose, maybe.
You know what? I'd be okay with that. And maybe while he's in the mindscape, he does become that monster. But that's just what's happening on the outside of him, while on the inside he's having that discussion.
Maybe, yeah.
We'll get into theories in a little bit because we need to talk about where we think he's going and stuff. So let me get through some of the things that were noticed in the episode, and then we'll have a chat about what we think comes next. So
I still just know that noise was not more so like not necessarily like theories. It was more like I just want to now. There's been so much talk about it. I just want to see that monster in execution. Do you know what I mean? I just want to because I know a lot of people like the idea, a lot of people don't like the idea. Let's just see that monster.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll come back to it in a minute because I've got a theory on maybe how it might go. Obviously, I noted down that he was absolutely brutal with Jasper. We've already talked about that. I liked Garnet's line a lot. We haven't really talked about this, but the moment when he runs away from the gems initially, who are really, we talked about actually, we've said this. He's alienated himself from everyone, weirdly with the gems, he's done it just by running away. He hasn't had an episode with the gems where he's had interaction with them. He's just avoided them at all costs. And that was really
the closest. The closest was the cactus thing, and I think I think one of the reasons he's avoiding them is because he's had the cactus episode was that white diamond moment with the gems. That was when the cactus was talking about his feelings and his emotions towards them. Yes. Yeah, I think that was kind of that. It's just that was. Right. That was 8 episodes ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. Okay, yeah, fair enough. But that "remember will always be your family" line from Garnet. Holy shit. Just wanted to point that line out for its awesomeness. In terms of other stuff that I noticed, so Stephen really has brought democracy to Homeworld. They're doing an election. Both the Zircons are up for a vote. I thought that was really neat.
Yeah, that was funny.
What president of Homeworld? Really unclear, but I like the idea that one of those quartzes was like, "Oh, well, I'm not going to support the that one. He's too behind the diamonds," which is just like, well, it was. Yeah, I found that really interesting. I don't need.
Yeah, that was very funny.
I don't need to know more about that, but that was enough for me to be happy. Homeworld looks real different now. For a start, actual plant life everywhere. There are plants in the diamonds rooms. The shot we got of the surface of Homeworld, the sky looks cleaner. It's not as dark and foggy, suggesting that they've put all these plants in and it's actually cleaning up the air on Homeworld. That's incredible. The idea that he's actually turning Homeworld, his shifts in the past have now got Homeworld going greener and cleaner and looking after their planet more. That's remarkable. There was no plant life on that planet that I remember from any previous episode, so that's really cool. The biggest one for me of things to spot, and thanks to Cram for pointing this out because I didn't realize after my first viewing, Lemon Jade. Oh, Lemon Jade! Oh. Lemon Jade's back and fine, and thank the Lord.
That's great. I didn't notice that.
No, tiny, absolutely tiny. It's the shot when he first goes into the old throne room. And you've got a wide before we go into that specific tour that's happening. Which has some other characters that we'll talk about in a second. But when it's the wide shot on the steps, Lemon Jade looking around, looking happy in the very room she was poofed in. But yeah, thrilled to see Lemon Jade out and about and happy and together. That's
great.
That meant a lot to me, weirdly. Even though I don't expect her to get any lines or scenes or anything like that, that was enough so I know she's safe and sound and happy. That meant a lot. One of my favorite characters, very happy. Other gems that appeared, we had a Peridot with square hair, which was not Squaridot, a character from the video games, because Squaridot has her gem in her eye. This gem did not, but I did like the little nod to the games there. She was a Peridot with a square head. The one in the games goes by Squaridot, but it's a different gem. We got a Turtleneck Jade, an Ocean Jasper. We got Topaz, which we haven't seen in a while. I assume it's our Topaz. From the I Am My Mom. No,
I assume so. Yeah.
Are You My Dad? I Am My Mom episodes. We got a new kind of pearl called aubergine pearl, which I thought was a really interesting thing. So that pearl was leading the tour. Credited as aubergine pearl, voiced by Dee Dee, as with all the other pearls. A lot of the other quartzes voiced by Michaela Dietz, Amethyst as well in this episode. We saw the pebbles running around quite happy and free. And then one of my favourite, because it's one, a really weird image, but two, I just like that they've shown they're free now. But do you remember when he was on Homeworld, Chris, before Change Your Mind, and the walls had faces? They were gem walls, and they were looking scared. Just trucking through the back of a scene, a wall, in wall form, sort of like shuffling about from one corner to the next. A piece of wall with a face.
That's awesome.
One of the weirdest things, but I love the idea that even the gem walls are now free to do what they like. Yeah. Lovely.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, bit weird, but fine. Just the visual of very weird. So...
yeah, I'll have to go back and check that out. I didn't spot that.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's genuinely incredible. Like, that first few minutes, there are so many gems to see. And there are more even as we go forward through it. When we go to Yellow's room, the two gems that she's sort of one fixing and the other one's like friends with them are Shirt, that's the sort of orangey brown quartz gem, and Flint, who was the blue quartz gem. Now, interesting thing about Shirt and Flint are that they were actually originally designed to be members of the Off Colors team, and were set to originally appear in the episode Wanted. But what happened was, the reason they were supposed to be off colors was that they were disagreeing with the Diamond's wars. So they were being rejected by Gem Society for having a different political opinion, essentially. You know, they didn't think that Gems should be off conquering all these planets. So they were conscientious objectors, essentially. And they decided not to include them. One, because there were already a lot of off colors, and it was, you know, you don't want to make it too muddled and have too many different characters. You want to focus on the characters you're introducing. But also, all the other off colors were born a certain way that made them off colors. Whereas these two, they felt different because their difference came from their opinions instead, and that felt like a line that separated them two from the rest of the off colors. So they just moved them out, and they got their little cameo appearance here. They're the two gems that Yellow is repairing essentially when they go into Yellow's room.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So I thought that was nice.
Yeah, it's a nice nod.
Yeah, and then we had some interesting things said by Yellow. So she was reversing one of her awful experiments. I can't always find every piece, but then she says fixing the cluster is on her to-do list. She lists a bunch of stuff she wants to get to.
Yeah, I noticed that one. I was like, "Ooh, that's an interesting, yeah."
I mean,
approach.
I think that is them saying that, like, that is them resolving that story beat, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. But the cluster, they've also presented, like, I love that and think that's great. I'd love to see that. We're not going to see it, obviously, but I'd love to think that plays out with Yellow saying, what do you guys want me to do? Because obviously, yes, the last time we saw the cluster, they were thumbs upping and they were not happy as Larry, but they seemed content. They seemed,
sure
to. Yeah, so I wouldn't want to undo that, but I like the notion of they're going to check in on the cluster.
Yeah, the idea that Yellow might undo that experiment, the cluster, and put those gems back together, because obviously the cluster, if those who don't remember, it was quite a horrific idea. It was shards and shards of gems all just sort of mushed together into this being, fragments of hundreds of beings and mushed together. It sounds, I mean, it's, it sounds really horrific. And even though the cluster did seem happy in itself when we last saw the cluster, yeah, there's a part of you that goes, I wonder if they maybe would like to be put right again, given their individuality back. And the idea that Yellow is at some point going to go and maybe do that, I think it's a lot. I've seen a lot of people speculating, like, oh, does this mean we're going to get maybe a spin-off comic about Yellow doing that, or are we going to deal with that next episode? I don't think so. I think it was intentionally a throwaway line, just so that when this show is over, we can sort of tick off the box of what happened with the cluster. Yellow probably went and resolved that eventually. Yeah, I don't think it's a hint at where it's going or anything like that, but I do like that idea. Let's have a look. Anything else? Can I just mention the moment where Spinel sings "I Could Make a Change" back at Steven? It's fucking spectacular.
Yeah, that was very funny.
Just unbelievable. How did you get over your trauma? Well, I got some advice from Steven Universe. She's like, I could make a change. Fucking amazing. Everything about Spinel in this episode made me happy, if I'm being honest with you. I'm one of the people that loved Spinel and continues to love Spinel, whereas Nadia, who found her mildly annoying in the movie, continued to find Spinel mildly annoying in this episode.
That moment was great. I love that moment.
Another detail I noticed is that as Steven is leaving, did you notice his hair changing?
No.
So as he was running away, he was shapeshifting, right? Because he was losing control again. So he was like ballooning up, ballooning back down. One arm would go big, one part of his face would go big and then small again and all that stuff. His hair at one point shifts. And a lot of people have noted that it looks a lot like Pink Diamond's hair from before she became Rose Quartz. I don't know if that's a hint at what you were suggesting earlier, that he'd have some way of talking to Pink or Rose in the next episode, or at least in his head. Because I actually just had an idea. In the end of oh god, we're referencing Harry Potter again. But do you remember the end of the Harry Potter books? He's talking to Dumbledore, and he's like, "Am I really talking to you, or is this all just in my head?" And Dumbledore's kind of like, "I mean, yeah, we're really talking, but what does that stop it from being in your head?" It's kind of like that ambiguous. Like, it's a bit of both is the answer, right? I wonder if they do something like that with Harry, with Stephen talking to Rose / Pink, where it's like at the end he's not actually sure if he really communicated with the essence of them that still lives within his gem, or if he just sort of internally conjured them up to give himself that closure.
I don't know what their version of that would be, but certainly some version of that would be awesome. And I think what I've been picturing with my obsession that they're going to get Stephen confronting Rose somehow.
Well, before I quickly get to the trivia, there isn't a huge amount of trivia because most of it was the stuff we've already covered. So I'll flick to that very quickly. But in terms of theories going forward, I'm still feeling like Stephen might separate from his gem to create that monster. I don't think he's necessarily going to turn into that monster. It's definitely possible. I'm not planting a flag in any theory here. But while this episode wasn't quite the episode I pictured, because I pitched last time that it was going to be... this episode was going to be him going to White to remove his gem. But I could still see a version of the world where he isolates himself, he goes to like Spinel's garden or, some location we're aware of that he's going to be alone. And he's isolating himself because he's worried he's going to hurt everyone. When he was at home, he nearly hurt Greg, he hurt Jasper, he just nearly hurt White because he lost control. So he just sticks himself somewhere, outside of everything. I have an idea. I have a potential idea that maybe the next episode starts where that has happened, but we skip it, and the next episode starts with him returning to Earth after a reasonable amount of time has passed, and everything is fine in quote marks, and we don't know why. And then towards the end of the episode, we realize he doesn't have his gem anymore, and wherever he went off on his own, he separated the gem. And that's been sat somewhere festering and becoming the worm monster.
Yeah, that would be very powerful. That reveal that he didn't have his gem anymore would be huge. That would be quite a moment.
Yeah. So I mean, who knows? The funny thing is when I put this episode up, those episodes will be airing within an hour of this going up, so it's not going to seem much like a theory if I'm proven right. It's going to seem like we recorded it as it aired or whatever. But yeah, I'm not saying that's necessarily definitely what's going to happen, but like as a theory, I think that feels quite possible.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
But in terms of, let's assume for a minute though, that's quite a jump. And if we do see where it is he's going, where do you think he's going? What do you think we're seeing next? Like, have you got any theories or thoughts on where it's going after this?
No, and I kind of like that. My assumption was back to Earth, but I prefer your idea. I know he's just run away from Earth, but it feels like where he would go. I don't know. And also because the next one is everything's fine, suggesting he's saying that to someone who cares about him, which would imply Earth. So I think he's going back to Earth in all probability. Mm-hmm. Because I can't think of somewhere else he would go, apart from, like you say, an abandoned planet to do that, and then maybe we don't see it. I like that notion a lot. No, I didn't have... I'm along for the ride at this point. I didn't particularly have any theorizing on that.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. I think at this point that's fair and reasonable because it's been such an unpredictable series. I feel like
absolutely.
I feel like anyone that has a theory that committed to at this point is setting themselves up for a fall, because I have been talking about this the last couple of episodes. This idea that he would separate from the gem and the gem would become the monster rather than him turn into the monster. But I'm not married to that. Like I'm not. That's where my mind keeps going naturally when I think of thematically where the story is pushing forward. The idea that the last great thing he's going to try to do that's going to fail, where he's not learned his lesson of looking after him, looking internally, is the external idea of I'm just going to take. Like, it just makes so much sense to me that somebody who's worried about his powers hurting his friends would try to get rid of his powers.
Yeah, absolutely.
It just
yeah.
so, but I'm not completely married to that. There's a million different ways this could go that make also maybe not equal sense to me because obviously I'm leaning towards that, but like very close. Like I do think there's a possibility he might just become that monster and sort of not corrupt. Corrupt is the word people keep using, but I think that's the wrong word. Corruption's a very specific thing. I don't think he's going to corrupt. I think he may the way we've proven that his shapeshifting happens with his mood. He could just shapeshift into that thing. That's like that is. That's a distinct possibility, let's be honest. He's very powerful, and shapeshifting is clearly something he's been doing a lot of recently. So,
Yeah, he could just rage into that monster.
100% possible. So, I think anyone committing to any theory at this point is probably setting themselves up for a fall. But the one I'm leaning to is this idea of him thinking he can solve his problems by removing the gem. I still think that fits quite well. But...
yeah, I think that's a really nice thematic idea, and I think that I certainly love that notion of you being on tenterhooks because you're not sure what's happened, and then that big reveal of the gem being gone.
Yeah, and then revealing maybe even as like a cliffhanger for that episode, like where it is and what it's become or becoming, setting us up for the final 2 episodes. Yeah, that's a really potentially powerful way to do it. But I'm open to whatever honestly, at this point, I'm just like, I'm in. Whatever they're going to do, I'm sure I'm going to love it. This series has been so good. I feel very confident.
Hopefully not final 2, though. I still love the idea of the final episode future being the epilogue to the epilogue.
Yes, true.
So
yes.
Therefore, set us up for the final one. If they don't do that, fine. But I love that notion of something set in the future, akin to the train scene, the train platform scene of the last Harry Potter book, where in without going, this is what happened to so and so. We just see it, and we see a fusion of Bismuth and Pearl, or them holding hands, or something like that, and that we don't need to devote an episode to because we can't get it. So instead of having an episode of Bismuth and Pearl, we just know that 10 years time that's happened. I would love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm on board with that. I think you're right. I think that I think you're right to want that. I think that is probably the best way they could potentially end the show. I could see that upsetting a lot of fans as well, though.
Yeah, because of the heartache of what you don't get. But I think that's we've in a way we've already experienced that in the time jump between the show and the movie.
I think a lot of people are going to be disappointed that this is. I don't think this is going to be the epic end that Change Your Mind was. I think this show has proven itself to be a much more subtle beast. And I think people are expecting epic battles and craziness like Change Your Mind, and I think they've done that. And this is very much a sort of more scaled down, more personal story. And I don't think it would be right to do it at that sort of scale.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think that would fit this show at all. What this show is in future. Anyway, so yeah, last few bits of truth before we sign off, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Blast through it. Not much. I brought some of it into the discussion we've already had, like about those 2 gems that were originally going to be part of the off colors, like stuff like that was going to be in the trivia. So I'm going to skip over a bunch of stuff here. But yeah, so you may not have spotted, but Cherry Quartz, as in our Cherry Quartz from the very first episode of Steven Universe Future, was in Blue's room, suggesting she's just every now and then just popping over. She might still be enrolled in Little Homeschool. I mean, when Stephen gave her the introduction speech, he was like, "If you choose to stay, like you're free. You go do what you can come do this, or you can go do whatever." So she's either just chilling on Homeworld now because she's not interested in Little Homeschool, or she's they've got a galaxy warp right in the center of Little Homeworld, so. She could just be, spending the weekends back on Homeworld. Like but she's
that idea. I like that she's taking advantage of that flexibility.
Yeah, so she was in Blue's room on one of Blue's clouds, feeling happy with an aquamarine, which also apparently is one of the aquamarines we've seen. Not our aquamarine is in the villain, but an aquamarine that we've seen historically in Little Homeworld. So maybe they travel there together. Maybe they're buddies. It's hard to say. But I like that. That was nice. It was nice to see Cherry Quartz again. We're probably not going to see her again after this. So, yeah. I thought that was a nice little thing to see.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
Obviously, the title, Homeworld Bound, is a play on the words Homeward Bound. I don't know. That's in the trivia. It's a relevant reference. That is accurate. A bit like how Bismuth Casual was business casual. Stephen leaving one of his flip-flops behind while running out of the palace is a very direct reference to Cinderella, which is obviously repeated stylistic reference they keep making with him whenever he visits Homeworld. If you remember in Familiar, there were a bunch of references to Cinderella in Familiar, and Stephen in the pink outfit, and the way that was constructed by the pebbles and stuff. It was all very Cinderella. So it's not the first time they've done that with Stephen on Homeworld. So yeah, they're continuing that theme,
which is nice.
Spinel has 3 separate Sonic references built into her animation this week. I found that really weird, but I liked it. So when she chases Stephen out of White's room, she gets that spinny legs thing, which is how Sonic runs in the games. She also spin dashes like Sonic before she and Steven go see Blue Diamond, which I thought was really interesting because obviously that's become quite an iconic Quartz move. Like a lot of the Quartz soldiers use that spin dash technique, like Amethyst and Jasper. So I thought that was it was interesting that Spinel did it too. But then also Spinel used her legs as propellers to save Steven when he fell off the cloud, which is exactly how Miles from Sonic flies with his tail when he flies. So they were, and picks up Sonic and puts him back on ledges and stuff. So it was very much that felt. Yeah, there were 3 very distinct.
I thought that reminded me of something, but I couldn't pinpoint it, and I think it's that. I think I got that reference, but just didn't realize what I was getting. Yeah,
because I suppose when was the last time you played a Sonic game? I mean, when was the last time I played a Sonic game? Years ago. So yeah, now this one, I don't know about this one, Chris. I'm going to read you this as it's written, right? And I'm going to prefix this with, I don't know if this is intentional or found by the fans. Because I'm just not sure how I feel about this. The clouds that Blue Diamond use to feel better is a reference, according to this person, to the abuse of marijuana to make yourself feel better. Stephen claims that the magic cloud will not help him since it only makes him feel better rather than tackling the root cause of his issues.
Well, I mean, I can't... That's kind of what I was suggesting earlier. If they'd have had more time to explore that as an analogy. Not necessarily, I didn't necessarily mean specifically marijuana, any kind of alcohol, any kind of thing that you you turn to, any addiction you find. Obviously, in my case, food. In Dan's, masturbation. But
wow.
But anyway, moving on. I don't know what I was going to say. Yeah, I can't really criticize that as true because that's what I was getting at earlier. That's
but you were not presenting it as the intention of the episode. You were saying, "Oh, that's a story thread I wouldn't object to them pulling on." That's the difference. You were saying, "Oh, there's a thread of this here I could pull on, and you could go down this whole route about addiction and making the pain go away with drugs." This person is saying that as an intentional, designed reference, which I just don't think we know at this point whether it was or not.
I think that's just the language used. If they'd have put "could be interpreted as," then
I'd feel a lot better about it. Yeah, you're right. You're almost certainly right. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
I get it though. I can see why they're suggesting that. They're just perhaps presenting it too strongly.
I know where they got it from. I just don't know that it's definitely trivia. Does that make sense? Because to me, trivia comes from like what we know. What's the last thing on here? Oh, Steven said he wants to be better rather than feel better, which parallels White Diamond's contemplating on how she believed she was supposed to be better in Change Your Mind. So that's a good little reference to... Yeah. So there you go. That's so there's trivia, Chris.
Good trivia, Dan. 10 points.
I thought so. I mean, I snuck a bunch of it into the main bulk of the episode because I knew we were gonna... kind of overrun with this one because I kind of looked at everything that we had to talk about and I was like, God, this episode's fucking dense. This is like the densest episode we've had to deal with maybe since Future started. There was just so much going on that I was just like, oh, this is getting overrun slightly. That's one of the reasons I'm glad we've gotten to do this one separately because there really was a lot going on.
Yeah, like I say, we may record the other 3 separately. It makes it a bit challenging because we'd be recording and editing and uploading on the same day then if we do it bomb-wise.
It depends how I release it, which at this point I'm just sort of having to wing it because we were desperately trying to catch up to the show to hit those notes. So I don't know. And also, just a little observation: the episode hasn't gone out yet, or maybe it has, but no one's commented. But I commented on Steven's shoes being different. He had these like trainers on that were like, multicolored or whatever. Yeah, of course those shoes are different. He normally wears sandals or slippers, whatever you want to call them.
Oh yeah, of course.
So he put the coat on and some proper trainers because presumably he was going somewhere a bit colder. So there you go.
Yeah, but he went to that was Mr. Universe, wasn't it? Or was that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, that makes sense.
That went with his new coat. So there you go. So I realised about an hour after we recorded. I was like, I'm going to get tweets about that, aren't I? It's really obvious now I think about it. He wears sandals. He always wears them because he lives on a beach.
Yeah.
I get it.
Because I think you even said, like, oh yeah, he wears a coat as well. Like, so yeah.
Yeah, I really danced around it but didn't quite get there. Oh, one other tiny thing. Apparently, I've not spotted this, but apparently the vegetation, because there's plants everywhere on Homeworld now. Apparently the plants in Yellow's room are the same plants. This isn't in the trivia, but it should be. They're apparently the same plants from the Jungle Moon planet.
Oh, that's quite cool.
Yeah. So, I guess, didn't we establish that was one of Yellow's colonies? Because he found a control room there, didn't he? And that's where he had his memory of being Pink talking to Yellow. And
I think that, like I say, I think that sounds right.
Yeah. So if that was one of Yellow's colonies, which I'm pretty sure it was, I'd have to double check. But the idea that she's revisited one of her colonies and come back with some of the local vegetation to fill her room with, I think that's just something really sweet about that. I don't know. I liked that idea a lot.
Yeah, I agree.
No, so I forgot about that one, but there you go. So that's everything for this time. I hope you guys enjoyed, because I suppose most of you listening to this will have seen the final 3 episodes already, I suppose. But yeah,
yeah, depending on release, yeah.
But I hope you all enjoyed it. For those of you who've already seen it, those of you who haven't, let's in a position we're in, let's tackle it together. I'm very excited. I can't wait.
No, I can't wait. I'm so pumped for these final 3.
Yeah, pumped covers it. I'm really excited. Really excited.
Absolutely.
So thanks for listening. We'll speak to you potentially in the next couple of days for the next episode of this. Although the exact schedule we're not sure. We'll just pump them out as quickly as we can. Basically, I tried committing to a schedule of 3 a week, but then when this leaked early, it just threw even that in, and I'm just sick of laying plans and watching them get obliterated. So we'll just put them out when I've edited them. Like I can't. I'm so tired now of having a plan in my head and watching it get shot to shit immediately. This episode leaking shot that plan to shit immediately. So fuck it. Like I don't mean to sound glib, but I'll put it out when I put it out. But in the meantime, like, subscribe, comment, all those things that help us out normally. Go to the Patreon. You can give us some money if you can and want to. That's great. If you're a person who's struggling at the moment, definitely don't. If you're already giving us money and you're struggling at the moment, because of the situation we're in the world, please cancel that subscription. If you need me to give you a refund on any of the recent payments, I can do it. Let me know. We'll sort it out. I can help. Let me know. Speak. Otherwise, you can get me on Twitter at Dan Doolan. Chris is at C Billingham with 2 M's. I think that's everything. YouTube.com/NothingButStaticUK if you want to subscribe to us there. We're on all the other places, iTunes and what have you, and Spotify if you want to give us the reviews and listens on those places. That helps also. And also comment below. Feel free. What should we give them a thing to say this week? Last week we asked them to say hello. With Steven Universe ending this week, do they say goodbye?
Oh, not yet. No. Goodbyes for the waffle that will be the finale.
Yep, gotcha.
Episode. From a waffle from our point of view, not the show's. So I think for this, it's only appropriate for it to be diamonds.
Diamonds. The word diamonds in the post below proves you got all the way to the end.
No, because that's maybe what a couple of diamonds.
Oh, make it more specific. So I don't confuse it with just somebody who felt the need to comment diamonds.
Because we're just talking about the diamonds, yeah. So what a couple of diamonds, though. What a couple of diamonds, those Chris and Dan's.
Oh, don't make it longer. What a couple of diamonds is fine.
Okay, what a couple of diamonds.
Yeah, so stick that in the comments below to prove you got all the way to the end, you amazing person, you. But yeah, thanks for listening, for going on the journey with us. We'll see you next time. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
We'll speak to you next time when we discuss Everything's Fine.
Sweet.
Decide for yourself whether that was dramatic pause or that I momentarily forgot the name of the episode.
I thought it was you kind of being like, everything's fine?
I forgot.
Fair. Bye.
Bye.